Hi, everyone. It's always exciting for me to come to New Orleans because I'm from here, which means that my parents are here and all of my mom's friends. If you're in a club with my mom, you're here. If you were a Little League mom, you're here. Shout out to Maggie Murphy. And my dad's here. Hey, Dad. My mom's here. Hi, Mom. They're not sitting together, and that's okay. Yeah. Maybe even better. So, also, it's very fun to do things with Nicole, who I'm so grateful. We're here for 24 hours. So we got in yesterday afternoon, and we leave to the airport right after this. So we have to get home to our kids. So it's, I'm so grateful that you took the time out. I'm so grateful that all of you took the time out because I love this city and this book festival so much. And it's fun to do things with Nicole because Nicole and I talk pretty much every single day. We have a morning phone call. And so these kinds of chats just end up being our morning calls in front of people. So I'm excited for what you want to talk about, Nicole.
Yeah, we do this a lot. First of all, Cleo, thank you for having me and asking me to come and do this with you. Cleo and I like to joke that we really love to work together even though we don't do the same thing. But we're
coworkers, but we literally have no work together.
Yeah, but when we find it, we take advantage of it and we create it, and it's so beautiful because opportunities like this come up. And first of all, I feel very honored as your friend that you asked me to come here to your hometown, because I know, that how deeply you love New Orleans and how special not only the city is to you, how special this book festival is to you. And, I think us as moms were like, okay, how do we do this and, keep our schedule with our family and our kids, and, let's just make the most out of it. And we are able to do that, and we really just, take advantage of those moments. And it's very, very special. And, this morning we spent the morning talking about books, and the idea of, the topic of homecoming came up. You write about it in your book, and I've told you this. The first line in this book is, "We get lost." And I think that is such a powerful sentence to start a book with, because I think that all of us, when we are lost, feel so isolated in that moment. And it's really a very strong and powerful way to just bring everyone in and understand that we all get lost. And I'm wondering, for you as a writer, but also as a person, when you are writing, when you are thinking about the life that you want to create, is it easy for you to recognize in those moments of feeling lost that is a part of the journey?
Well, there's so much on feeling lost, because I think there's these micro moments of feeling lost. I think there's macro moments of feeling lost. There's abstract feelings of lostness. There's literal feelings of lostness. And one day I was listening to, some kind of guided meditation or something, and this kind of speaker says, if you've ever listened to a guided meditation, all they're saying is kind of trying to continuously get you to be present again and again and again. And one of the things that the woman said was, and if you found you've wandered, know that there's a homecoming available to you. And in that, she was just trying to return the listener to presence. And for me in that moment, I think I was listening to that when I was kind of in the midst of, I don't remember, it might have been my first or my second kid when I had postpartum depression, and I was like, oh, a homecoming's available to you. When you feel far, a homecoming's available to you. And then what are these touchstones for how you get back there? And in that moment, there's certain things that click, and they don't heal you, but they kind of direct you towards healing. Because, a mantra is not going to heal you. A paragraph in a self-help book isn't going to heal you, but it might set you on a different path towards healing. And it might redirect you. And that's all you can really hope for from anything. And that's why we do these things. We write these books, we listen to these people, we go on walks in nature, we do all of these things, not because that exact gesture or act of care towards ourselves represents a healed self. It's because we wander. And we have to find our way back home to ourselves. And in that, we have to remember that a homecoming is always available to us. And I feel particularly emotional talking about that, obviously, in my hometown. Because in my own moments of wondering, how do I figure this out? How do I turn this into a career? How do I get out of this relationship? Or how do I take the step into this next thing? I would wind up sitting in New Orleans in one of my parents' living rooms having a homecoming so that I could create the next intentional direction of my life. And, there's this, I was saying to Nicole earlier that I rarely could say that I have a favorite page in any book I've ever written, but there's this one, and maybe I'll even read it if I could find it. Unfortunately, I don't put an index in any of my books because I think it's annoying for the reader, but it's actually annoying for me because I can never find anything. But because I'm like, I just want it to feel like a journey. And then later I'm like, where is it? But there's this excerpt in the book where I remember when I was writing this that as I was writing, I kept hearing the voice of the old Motel 6 commercial guy who would say, "We'll leave the light on for you." And I remember thinking it's so crazy because "we'll leave the light on for you" became my mantra out of periods of darkness. I remember thinking you know what, before you could, have Google Maps and this and that, you trusted that a map told you there was a Motel 6 somewhere and it was in 28 miles or it was in 56 miles and you couldn't see it and maybe it was getting closer or maybe it wasn't, but we'll leave the light on for you. And there was this belief that the map was right. So what if the map is kind of your inner map, your inner GPS? You believe that it's there. And you start by just taking the road. You don't go back because you don't belong behind yourself. You don't want to go where you just were. So you believe that somewhere forward, someone, and the someone being you, has left the light on for you. And it became, I was saying to Nicole that especially during when Remember Love came out, it was such a difficult time. It was, within a week of October 7th, and it was a really hard time to be on the road. And I mean, and a lot of the times I think when a macro horrible thing's happening in the world, also the kind of our individual experiences feel really emphasized because really big, terrible things remind us of the fragility of our little terrible things of life. And it was such an intense time to be on a tour, and it's also, when big things are happening, you're kind of like, it feels weird to center yourself or be like, and please buy my book. And you're like, okay, there's a war, So I remember having that mantra myself. I think I cried after every single tour stop I had, and I would take a breath and I would say, the light is on, and it feels a little distant, and this is hard, and it feels like a period of darkness where I can't see the light, or it feels so dim I can faintly see it, but I have to believe that it's there, and I just have to keep going. And I was grateful and that I'd written that because I think, I've never written something that was advice I wouldn't take myself or give to my best friend or my parents or my auntie or my cousins or someone I love. And so it was really cool that it could be returned to me in that moment while I was even presenting this book to the world. I think it was really cool.
Yeah, and I think that that's really important to express that you actually, even though you got to a place where you could even get to the other side of it, of that chapter of your life, and then be able to write it and publish it, and then it's out in the world. That does not mean that you don't have to keep reminding yourself that there is that light that you have to turn on inside. And so, like,
yeah, because there's no
other
destination of self-love. Love is a reflection of care, and care is something you have to practice and claim, which is also hard. And we were saying this morning, it's like, everything that you need that can only be given to you from your internal self, that kind of shimmery, magical, spiritual, is only something you can claim or take for yourself from the world. No one will hand you self-care. No one will hand you moments of self-love. No one will give you, or force you to acknowledge your self-worth. Those are all things you have to claim, harness, and practice if you want to have any relationship with any of them. And I think that a lot of the time, I used to joke that the biggest thing that people, the most asked thing that when I went on my first tour almost 10 years ago for Heart Talk, the question I was asked the most is, and it would always be kind of asked in like a secretive way, like, oh, can I just ask you one quick? And I thought they were gonna ask me about like my hair care or something, but they were like, how'd you get to self-love? And I always remember that so many people asked me that, and when I wrote this book, it was so important for me because I was like, you know what, does Heart Talk make people feel that, oh, I got to self-love, therefore here's just a representation of a very loved self saying things that could make your day a little better? And so when I wrote Remember Love, I really wanted to show the journey of getting up from an unloved moment, getting back on track from a period of time without giving care to yourself. Because it's that claiming and reclaiming and returning and homecoming to yourself that is the love and that is the care. It's not like, oh, I did it, I practiced, I read this, I did it, like I've been working on myself and like here I am, no matter where you think you get to, all of a sudden you're confronted with something that is going to challenge your self-esteem, your confidence, your sense of self. We all know that moment of like, you think you're doing so great and you're like, oh, I'm over this person. And you're like, and I'm out with my girlfriends and da-da-da-da-da-da-da, and then it's either like your phone rings and it's their name on the thing, or they walk in the room and you're like, your stomach drops and you're like, whoa, did I fall backwards? And you're like, no, you didn't fall backwards, you fell down and you're gonna get up. And knowing you deserve to get up so that you can move forward is the love. Moving forward isn't the love, it's a byproduct of loving yourself and caring for yourself and knowing that you deserve to walk into the life that belongs to you.
How do you, in this journey, if you're not getting to the other side of it, and it's a constant state of being a human being, how do you decide when the right time to write it is? Are you writing in your most isolated, lost moments, or are you waiting until you have gotten to some version of the other side of it? How do you decide when you can really reflect on it and then write about it?
I think a lot of that has to do with what you feel where you find your purpose in your art lies. So there's so much amazing art that is truly like the emotional unloading and dumping from within that is like unfiltered and raw. And I think we could all think of that, artists we love, their songs that are like that, or their writing that is like that. And it is just so truly raw and unfiltered. And what we love is that they have created no barrier between themselves and you, and maybe they've completely changed their mind about that thing 10 weeks later or whatever it might be. For me, part of being in community, which is something that I value so much, is taking responsibility for myself and and what I'm sharing. And that's not to present a facade, but it's to, our friend Phil, I once said this to him because he asked me a similar question, and I was like, I always try to be the person that I would want to meet in a room. So if I met someone and as I shook their hand, they were like, really nice to meet you. And then they started kind of like trying to trauma bond with me or emotionally dump on me or freak me out with an overly personal kind of thing that is not, that I feel that they're asking me to hold instead of finding some kind of place where they're like, even if they're doing that saying, oh, I know I'm a little da-da-da-da-da, but I'm like, who would I want to meet or who would I want to sit and have dinner with? I wouldn't want to sit and have dinner with someone who was fake, and I wouldn't want to sit and have dinner with somebody who pretended they had no problems or none of their problems were that big a deal or that their relationship was so perfect or that their family life was so healed. Like, I wouldn't want that, but I also don't think I would want someone would request only codependence from me or some type of bond that I felt was not from a healed place. And so when I'm writing, you write in your darkest, most isolated periods, and you edit, for me at least, from a place where you're taking responsibility for this little space you take up in the world so that what you write can be an offering. And what I feel so grateful for is that often people will say, like, I felt that was about me, or that was, it felt like my life. And it's because, and that makes me so proud and happy because before I write every book, I do a little, before it's done, I write it, I put my hands on it and I say, this is what I hope it can be to someone. I hope that people can find themselves in it. I hope that it can be an offering. I hope that it's the equivalent to someone coming by with the tray and you like go to reach for it and you're like, oh, I gotta try that one. Like, this thing where people really find delight and pleasure and a treat for themselves in what you make. And that I am only able to do that in the editing process. I mean, right. The first draft of this book was, horrible. It was like, because the first draft is just a dump of everything, yeah. And it's disgusting.
And this is your most personal book.
It is. It's gross. Like, you're just like, oh, who is that? She sucks. and then it's just and the writing's bad because it's like taking the clay out and putting it on the table, and then you're making it. Then over time you start making it into something, and that's everything. I think that's all art. It's like or if you're like kind of cleaning your bedroom and you're like, okay, just pull everything out of the drawers and everything's on the floor, and you have to start by pulling everything out of the pantry or whatever, and then you start putting it back and finding a system and being like, oh, if that's there, I know where to find it, and that makes sense, and that's editing, and that's also intentionalizing your work, mm-hmm. Which is so important for artists to do, I think, to say, you have hopes for your work, and you also have an intention that says, this is who it's for, these are moments that it's for. I find that to be really helpful and important as an artist.
Do you ever, as you are editing, do you ever have moments where you're looking at a piece of writing and you're like, wow, I didn't realize how hurt this version of me was, and feeling like you want to give space for you to love yourself before you put that out in the world for everyone else to put their energy on it as well?
Yeah, it depends. It depends on if it feels real and responsible, or if you're trying to sanitize. If you're trying, and in that's also not helpful, because sometimes you're like, you know what, my most hurt self, again, if it's responsibly shared, is of value. Trying to heal and then create is kind of like it's a recipe for just not getting anything done. It's kind of like, oh, first I just have to do this and then I can make it, or then I have to do this, and then that's like a kind of a procrastination method, probably.
Yeah, because I do think that for me, the reason why I love books so much is because you find those moments of life that nobody wants to talk about, or that you're embarrassed to talk about, and then you find them in a book and you're like, oh my God, I am seen. Those moments where I feel the most alone, and that I'm too ashamed to even like look at within myself. I can see it in another person, and then all of a sudden feel connected. And so do you feel a responsibility to the reader or to yourself to really allow that? Because I felt that from you in this book more than any other book. And I was really proud of you as your friend, to see you put yourself out there at that level.
Well, I think certainly for heartbreak, I felt, I definitely felt a little scared to share parts of this book because it's also no one thinks that every single part of them and everything they've gone through is lovable. It is actually, which is the annoying part. And so you sit there being like, is this lovable? Am I sharing my unloved parts, even parts the parts I have even yet to love, let alone that I feel that this shame around that could somebody else love me, knowing these things. And then, in this book, it's divided into 3 sections, and there's a section on heartbreak. And as I even wrote a lot of that, I mean, so much of what I wrote in that was unsaid things to other people. They were things that I knew I'd never said to someone I'd once been with on the other side of, or in the midst of heartbreak. They were things I knew my friends had never said, that they had said to our group of girlfriends, but they had never said to that person. Sometimes some of it were things I wish I could tell my one friend who just can't get out of their relationship. I was like, I remember writing vicariously some of those essays saying like, God, like, this is just like what I really want to tell you, to just like, you don't deserve this, and you do deserve this. And that was scary to write because it felt a little bit like, taking like the privacy sign off the door and letting people kind of come into things. And that's always scary. I mean, because it's personal. I mean, and I could, if I had to, I could go through every single page of Remember Love and put 2 to 3 people's names on it.
Yeah.
And one of those names would always be mine. And I think that is, that's scary.
How easy is it for you to recognize within yourself when you are lost?
I think rock bottom's a real thing. Whether it's like, I remember being in my early 20s and being like, oh, I'm literally on the floor listening to Lauryn Hill. I guess this is rock bottom, actually. So, and in that, a bottom is a foundation. And my best friend Stevie's here. And in that, you and guess what? If foundness is empowering. Finding yourself after you're lost is the shimmery, magical part of life, and you are like, wow, you are so impressed with yourself when you find yourself after periods of lostness. That is, like when you talk about whatever empowerment, these things, they have a million summits about empowerment, this or that. Try finding yourself when you were truly like, I hate it here. That is unbelievable. You're proud, you're impressed, and it's like the most loving thing that happens to you. So I do think that, when you can, and it's hard, and I think that's why community is important, and accountability is important, and even habits, right before, a week and a half, 2 weeks before Remember Love came out, one of my very best friends, our very close friend, Diara's dad, passed away suddenly. It was horrible, and I had all these, obviously, work things coming out because you have so much to prep, and I just kind of dropped everything and went to DC for the time before my book instead of doing those things. And it's been horrible. It was horrible. Grief is terrible if that is something you are moving through or have ever moved through. And it being terrible, you have to say that and live in that. And for you to find any bright spots, it is a constantly rainy day with moments where the sun comes out, and that's just pretty much grief, especially high grief right away. But I have recently been talking about Diarra a lot lately because something happened in like month 2 where all of a sudden Diarra started running all the time and always had an artist's way kind of journal and was planning her whole day in it. She was so proactive in creating this schedule around checking in with herself, caring for herself, and in a way that wasn't trying to distract her from what she was moving through. And I likened it to, I was saying to a friend, it's like, I love seeing this because she's building a house where joy can return. And it's not faking joy, and it's not being like, I got this, I'm good, I'm da-da-da. She even kind of even recently returned to doing the work that is her passion work and her passion job, because though joy is not currently running through her body, and it just isn't, and she has good times. Like the first time we saw her laugh, she actually came to New Orleans, she came to our book talk, and I never, ever go out at nighttime during my tours because they're so intense. It's like a different city every morning, super early. And Diarra was like, I want to go dancing. And I was like, you do? This is like week 3. And I was like, let's fucking go. Like, I was just like, let's do this. Like,
Yeah.
we're gonna, and we were up so late.
So late.
I thought I was gonna throw up in the airplane. I mean, it was intense, but I could tell that like she was gonna smile again for the first time that night. And she did. And we're at Le Bon Ton. Any Tulane students here probably know about Le Bon Ton. We're at Le Bon Ton, and the brass band's playing, and she smiled.
Yeah.
And she got to have that moment, and I was so grateful, even though I did want to throw up the next day. But what I've been loving about Diarra is that, like, even though at this point in time she might only have moments like that, and that's grief and that's heartbreak is like that too, she is building something that is so intentional that I'm like, oh, joy is not in the house, but the house knows joy belongs. So one day it will return, and she is leaving the light on for herself. And it's been a really kind of beautiful thing to see, and it's also been very cool because it really affirmed my belief in, we get to come home to something, things return, the house starts to laugh again, and that lostness is an impermanent state, and perhaps necessary because she was at the bottom and she built something at her foundation instead of saying, I guess I just live here now. And it wasn't fake. It was hardcore because, and if you know, I always joke, I don't like to exercise, and I don't like exercise culture. And so for me, I was actually kind of annoyed because I was like, why is she getting up so early and running every morning? I want to go to lunch. And so like she knows it's actually been a point of tension at first. And I was like, I'm not going to give you a hard time because I think this is healthy and this is not. But I've been so proud to see that I wrote about rock bottom being a foundation in this book, but I was like, wow, I didn't feel that I would be witnessing it so intimately, so quickly. And I was like, yeah, she built something. Everything broke and everything fell, and then she built something, and it's beautiful.
And I think we do live in a world and in a culture where you just need to get to the other side of it and be like, no, I'm fine. I have gotten over this. I have moved through this.
You don't get over anything.
And you don't get over anything.
I hate that. Like, I hate that happens, and I hate that we think we do. You don't get over it. You don't get over the worst thing. You don't get over the heartbreak. Your heart breaks, and then, it takes new shape. It gives room to new things with that kind of open space. It shows you it can mend. It shows you that it never needed to be the original shape. And that's okay. But this idea, I feel like even in my first book, I remember writing, there are people and things and places you don't get over. I don't know. I don't feel like I'll ever be, whether it's a big life thing, like I don't think I'll ever get over Katrina. You live with the experience. You don't get over your first heartbreak or your greatest disappointments or the worst thing that's happened to you. You don't get over it. You kind of, It's like Audre Lorde says, it's like, pain doesn't stay pain, it turns into something else. You allow change to happen, you allow evolution to take place, you allow transformation because flesh and bones do that. It changes, it transforms, it becomes something else. You're not, you think because you're holding your phone all day, you're kind of like this machine that is going to like break down and get fixed, or something's wrong if you're moving slow, and it's like, actually, you're much nearer to whatever tree is outside or flower that's kind of blooming and breaking and regenerating and reaching for help from another flower or tree in a very natural way that is seasonal and feels and looks different every day. And if you can really embody that, there's so much more harmony to be found in even our worst experiences. And in knowing that there was no way things were supposed to be. A flower just does not think that. They just don't, this oak tree is just not saying like, oh, there was a hurricane one day and now I'm scared for the next one. It's just, it's not overthinking the experiences. It's saying like, that was hard and my limb was broken, and slowly but surely, I guess this thing grows back. And so I think the more we can really know that and have that type of connection, we're much more likely to find some type of fundamental okayness with what happens to us. And in that, we get to build with more grace. We get to forgive with more ease. We get to live amongst each other with more peace and understanding.
Who or what have been your greatest teachers throughout your life? And nature being one of them.
Nature being surely, and also, I don't know. I mean, for me at least, I'd say being a listener makes me a better writer, and so I think whatever I am in witness to, I am informed by, inspired by, good or bad. I've seen things go from broken and tragic in my own life and family to peaceful and in flow, and that witnessing is so informative of resilience. I remember trying to write a page about, I'm always obsessed with the words that get kind of so overused that we don't know what they mean anymore. So, like vulnerability is one of them, self-care is one, self-love is one, and resilience was another for me. I was like, what does that mean? Or what does it even at least feel like? Because I was like, everyone would be like, oh, you'd see like a coffee mug that said like resilience. And I was like, but when do I know I'm doing it? And I drafted, hundreds of pages about resilience for this book because I couldn't get it. And, one of the hardest things about the types of books that I love to write is that I want them to feel simple and really easeful in the way they interact with the reader. And so I was like, how do I get this? Because I couldn't nail it. And then I remember I was in New Orleans, and I was at my friend B. Mike's studio. And, he has that kind of famous, no one really knows whose quote it is, but people think it's like an indigenous saying, or I don't know. But, and it says, they tried to bury us, they forgot that we were seeds. And I thought about how, seeds begin in this really dark place and they feel so small and invisible. And like they're just nothing amongst big things. And all they do is reach for light until something starts to grow and happen and change. And if you can remember to just reach for the light and reach for the light and reach for the light, you unearth yourself, you turn into something else. You stop being the smallest thing in the ground. You leave the darkness, and you get to be amongst the other flowers, amongst the other people. You get to be in community. You get to witness. You get to see the sky. You get to look around, and you get to have more life. And that I was like, that is resilience. It's knowing that at this kind of very small moment of insignificance, you reach, and you just have to know to reach. And I think knowing to reach and the belief that like light's on the other end is profound. And it's resilience. And there's a page, shout out to B Mike, wherever you are.
Well, we are at our 10-minute mark, so I'm going to open it up to Q&A. Thank you so much, Cleo. Thank you.
Ew. Who's got a question? Dad. My dad.
Standing up.
My dad loves to stand at my talk.
I love it.
I guess you just come up here if you want to ask a question.
Hi. That was a great talk, by the way. I loved it. So I don't know when you moved out, but I was wondering what you think the impact of growing up in New Orleans that's so culturally rich and encourages creativity, how do you think that impacted your career?
I don't think you can be from New Orleans and not be about New Orleans. So it's, you'll find that it's like you sit down at a dinner and you're talking about that you're from New Orleans, or someone else says they're from New Orleans, and then you're like instantly think you're friends with them, and or at the very least cousins. And so I think there's a reason that Bob Dylan devotes chapters of his book to New Orleans, and there is no place like New Orleans. And I think to be from a place that has such an incredible bohemian spirit, there's so much room for the arts in such varied ways. And something that I think people don't talk about a lot about New Orleans, which has impacted my work the most, is that New Orleans is a place that is so rooted in intergenerational connection. So, I remember sneaking into like a bar on Frenchman in high school, and there was like a 90-year-old in there. And we were like, hey, Jim, and so I think that knowing that there's not this, there's so much to learn and be shared between people of every age and background, that was huge for me growing up here. And when I wrote, the moments that I'm the most proud of are times where someone has written me a letter, and it could be someone who's 16 writing me about the same poem that someone who's, 55 wrote about their divorce, and this person's writing it about their, healing from their eating disorder. And I think that had I not grown up in a place where everyone's life experience is so valued, no matter who you are, how old you are, and that we're so, and I saw the way the arts made us feel better or more connected, I feel that it helped me to want to write for every type of person in the world, and in a way that I would always hope there could be some universal connection, like, oh, me and Jim both like that band. And so that to me is, I don't know that any other place could have given that to me, because so many other places, while being amazing, have such a segregation of culture and age and background. So
Yeah, that's a great answer. Thanks.
that's it. No more questions? Just do it. I see you. I did.
Hi. Very good speech, by the way. I really liked your talk. But from your book coming from such like a raw perspective of yourself, how do you get over like putting yourself out there in that way? And was it scary for you to produce your book and put it out there for so many people to see and to read?
So Nicole and I are both actually very shy, kind of like
Introverted,
Virgos.
delicate Virgos. Yes, we are.
Before, like right now, I have BO because I'm like, before I got on, I was like, I'm sweating, I'm so scared. I'm like, I can't, I'm not the person who is like, I feel very comfortable on the stage, or, I don't have like, I always wish I had that kind of like, you know how I'm sure Oprah isn't always like, a car. You know, I think she probably has a mellow side, and I was always like, oh, am I just gonna get up? And I'm so boring, because I just am the exact same way I am at the dinner table with my friends, and I wish I had that kind of stage thing. And so I think you don't really get over those things. You just decide that what you want is probably more important than what you're afraid of. And so I am afraid, but I so feel called and hope that something I make can be helpful, that maybe that desire to offer, I've just decided is more important. But I still, okay, so let me tell you one quick story. That's pretty embarrassing. So when I gave my TED Talk, it was the first time I ever spoke publicly. Like, I think maybe I'd spoken before in front of like 15 people, and it was here in New Orleans. I was very emotional, I was very scared, and I'm wearing this like teal dress that I'm so excited about, and right before I'm sweating under my armpits. And I'm like, so I like get a bunch of tissue and I put them under, because I'm like, oh my God, I cannot have pit stains in my TED Talk. Like, this is like, and I'm like, I was like gonna be thinking about them the whole time. And so right before I get on the stage, the very last thing I'm doing, you know, and it's at a TED thing, someone comes on, and it's a moving event. It's not kind of like, oh, here's your day and you present. It's like there's a whole weekend of people. So you're backstage, one person's coming off. So right before I go on, I'm like, okay, I gotta take these tissues out, I gotta put them in the thing. And as I'm doing it, the supermodel Christy Turlington walks by me off the stage, and I'm like this. And I was like, ah. And I was like, okay, we're gonna do this. It's embarrassing to go after your dreams. It's embarrassing to do things that you're scared of, and it's uncomfortable, and perhaps that uncomfortable, tingling, awful feeling is reminding you you're alive and maybe in the right place.
Very well said. Thank you.
Yeah, do you?
Cleo is what, first of all, let me just say, I do not like to talk on the phone. I think that
every morning.
I live in LA, and it is very much a part of the culture in LA for people to call each other when they are in the car, because it's a lot of driving. And I hate when people call me in the car. I'm like, I am singing. This is not the time for you to be calling me. But I do have a handful of people, really less than that. I have 2 people that I like to talk to, and Cleo is one of those people. And I will say that the reason that she is, and let me very quickly say, Cleo never lets you get off the phone either. She just talks and talks and talks. She's very much like my mom. So it's a real match made in hell. But I find myself calling her every morning, because working things out with her feels like working things out with myself. Cleo is somebody for me, like, I want to unpack my experiences, everything from the small moments that are going on in my house to my family to even just being a person in the world, and having things that could potentially sometimes energetically very easily take me down. For me to unpack that with Cleo is something that's very special, because I think that we take in the world in similar ways. And so within that, I have found this incredible sisterhood in you, where when I need to unpack something or I'm trying to understand myself more, you are the person that I call to do so.
Oh my God. There's so many things I could say about Nicole. One, she is the funniest person on earth. But also, Nicole reminds me to that being sensitive is okay, and protecting your sensitivity as in a way where you're not saying it's problematic is necessary. And I think that to be like waving your sensitivity as your freak flag flying and saying like, yes, I'm sensitive in a way that's like, oh no, so I can't go there. Or no, I can't be around this person or this thing. And I think that that has really helped me to not feel like there was something wrong with me, that I was sensitive, or that like, you know, and especially because I haven't lived in LA long, and it's a very strange place, guys. And so I'll say to her, I was like, I went to this thing and I saw these people and I was like, I don't know, this was like really weird. And she's like, yeah, you can't go there again. And I was like, oh. And because it's, she reminds you that you'll be in environments and there's nothing wrong with the environment except that there is not room for a person who is as sensitive as you. And there's nothing wrong with you. That is totally okay. And I think to have someone in your life who consistently allows for you to just have kind of bubble wrap yourself and have that tenderness is so affirming, because, we all even have people we love or friends that make us feel crazy, like, oh, really? You felt that? And I feel
I didn't feel it at all.
Yeah.
I had the best time, and then
Right.
you feel crazy.
And I feel so comforted to know that I always have someone I can call to be like, ooh, tell me more. Let's kind of tease that out, because everything you feel is real to you. And so I'm grateful for that, and I love it. I love you. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Cleo and Nicole. I'm Cheryl Landrew, and I have the blessing of being the co-chair of this wonderful festival. And I also want to say that I first met Cleo when she was 10 years old. She's a friend of my daughter's, and I can say she was as special then as she is now, and I'm so grateful that she came all the way from California to LA, both you and Nicole, to be with us today. So thank you, and thank you for attending our festival, and enjoy.